Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Casper.
Maybe one year we can get our next guest, who's a big-time golfer himself, Mr. Rob Demovsky, who is joining us here this morning. Maybe we could get you up here one of these years, Rob, to golf in our golf outing. But we appreciate you taking some time this morning and chatting a little green and gold with us.
No problem, Dan. How are you?
Not bad. Can you believe 1 week already into training camp? 1 week from today, or 1 week ago today, camp began?
It feels like it's been a month because so much happens at training camp. Like one day, it seems like so long ago because you fill your notebook with all these different things that happen in camp and what people say. But it is actually kind of crazy to think that it's only been a week because it feels a lot longer. Not in a bad way, just that it's just the busiest time of the year, and it's the only time really that anybody, fans and media included, get to see full practices. So you just kind of, there's so much to absorb.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let me just kind of start off generically. Within 1 week here, has there been a player or something that has really caught your eye or maybe kind of jumped out to you the most?
Well, I'm sure that if we went back into the archives and looked up when we talked at this time last year, I would have told you Matthew Golden. And that didn't exactly, not necessarily fault of his own, but that he didn't necessarily have the big impact that, we all thought he would because he was unbelievable in training camp. And I'll say this, he's been all over the place catching everything in camp this year. But I'll give you another rookie just because of the opportunity. Two of them really, that he's got the opportunity. First off is Brandon Cisse, their cornerback. He started camp sort of as the third guy, not necessarily the slot guy, but just a third in the cornerback on depth chart. And then Carrington Valentine got hurt a few days ago, and Cisse's been pretty much in there the entire time. And he gives up some plays, and I might tell you how great he's been. And then week one, Justin Jefferson's going to go 10 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or something. But he's been really good. He's fast. He's physical. Matt LaFleur praised him yesterday for just how he approaches it and how he studies, how diligent he is, all those kind of things. And then, Chris McClellan, their defensive tackle, has been in the mix. When it comes to there's no sacks obviously in practice, but he's pushing the pocket, pushing people into the quarterback. And as you know, man, they need some pass rush early on without Micah, and Chris McClellan, number 55, might be a guy to keep an eye on.
You mentioned Micah Parsons. Lucas Van Ness is obviously going to be, one starter. Yeah. Has somebody emerged at least through the first week that could be the starter opposite of him until Micah comes back?
It's been Barron Sorrell, and in fact, he had an unbelievable practice yesterday. Won, I think, all of his one-on-one pass rush reps, and then actually had a pick six on a screen pass, which you don't, every once in a while you see those clips where defensive ends or defensive linemen, read a screen just perfectly and then take it the other way. And he did that exact thing. They had run a backside screen earlier in practice, and he sort of made a mental note of it. And when he saw the look again, he jumped all over it. It was supposed to be for Jacobs in the left flat, and Sorrell just picked off Love's pass. And, not as necessarily a pass rush move, just a guy who has shown a playmaking ability. I will say this. When it comes to, and I wrote about this in our daily training camp report on ESPN.com yesterday, it's pretty obvious what Jonathan Gannon's strategy is going to be until Micah Parsons comes back, and it's just blitz everything. It's blitz. They've sent guys from all over, from all positions, which is interesting because Gannon hasn't been a big blitz guy in his career. And I don't know if you remember his introductory press conference, Dan, when we asked him about, you always say you don't really have a playbook or a scheme. And he said, yeah, I don't, because I want to be able to adapt to what I have. And it looks like right now he's adapting and trying to find guys that can get pressure with the blitz.
With the offensive line, we're talking with Rob Demovsky from ESPN.com, Packers reporter for ESPN.com. The offensive line, I think, a lot of fans are looking at this group with some questions. how has Jordan Morgan looked so far? How has that group looked with, Aaron Banks missing some time too?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, we'll get to the injury situation in a second, but the interesting thing is, I asked Brian Gutekunst, the GM, about, how important it's going to be to get some stability on the offensive line, having the same guys, in the same spots all the time. And his quote was really interesting. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said, "I think we finally have guys in the places that make the most sense," which tells me that he thought they were playing guys out of position last year. Some of that his own doing. By signing Aaron Banks, they moved Elton Jenkins to center. He had never, he didn't. It turned out to not be a good move, and then Jenkins got hurt. And then, of course, last year they had Rasheed Walker playing left tackle instead of Jordan Morgan, which is they drafted Jordan Morgan 2 years ago to be a left tackle. So I thought that was an interesting comment by Gutekunst. Now, as for the injuries, you're right. Aaron Banks has barely practiced, which, he's supposed to be the left guard, and that's a concern given how injured he was last year. But if everybody's right and healthy from left to right, it'll be Jordan Morgan, Banks, Sean Ryan, Anthony Belton, and Zach Bacco-Biwelli, who's the man formerly known as Zach Tom. I don't know if you saw that he changed his last name. But that's a group that makes sense to me, and Morgan's going to be tested, right? I mean, they drafted him in the first round 2 years ago, and he said, "I'm a left tackle," and then they stuck him at guard. So this is really kind of the first time we've seen him play tackle extensively. And I'll just tell you this, yesterday they have a one-on-one pass rush, pass blocking drill, and there's always one featured matchup where the guys go multiple times in a row. And yesterday it was Morgan against Van Ness, and Morgan blocked them all 3 times. And they were good moves by Van Ness. He tried a bull rush power move one time, and Morgan stood him up. He tried a speed move, and Morgan was able to deflect that. And then Van Ness tried to spin inside, and Morgan blocked that. So it's just one little drill, but so far so good for Jordan Morgan. However, I don't know if you saw the comments that LaFleur made the other day about how he was upset that there were too many people in the quarterback's lap. And he was saying he was more that he was criticizing the defenders for getting too close to Love and, possibly, causing an injury. But I'm thinking to myself, man, he should be ripping his offensive line for letting it happen, Right.
Yeah, exactly. I did see that too, and I wasn't sure if he was kind of calling out his defensive players for being too aggressive or the offensive. Wow.
I think he was. He's like, we need guys to veer off and pull up and veer off. Well, how about your offensive line just blocks better?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Man. Speaking of stay on the offensive side, how concerning is it with that tight end depth? Tucker Kraft is obviously back. I don't think he's doing everything yet, but I mean, the Lucas Musgrave neck injury doesn't sound the greatest.
I was going to say, what tight end depth? They don't have any. They don't have any. At the end of practice 2 days ago, they had 3 healthy and available tight ends, not counting Kraft because he's not doing any team stuff. And they went out and they signed 2 guys yesterday. Honestly, they're 2 guys that aren't going to make the team, but they needed 2 guys just to practice. So it's not good. I mean, Josh Wiley is their number 1 tight end right now, and he had, I believe, 5 or 7 catches all of last year in 8 games for the Packers. So now the good news is Kraft seems to be way on track, even ahead of schedule, and he said he's going to play in the opener without any limitations, which is good. But Luke Musgrave had a neck injury that he suffered in minicamp, and that was back in June, and he's still not practicing, and the neck injuries are a big problem. I would not be surprised if come late in camp, or even on cut down day or after cut down day, they add a tight end or 2 either via waivers or try to pull off a trade, or because they're going to need some help, and it just doesn't look right now. It just doesn't look like Musgrave's very close to being able to play.
Mm-hmm. The kicking, we've been seeing your updates and keeping track of missed field goals. I know the operation's a little bit off with Matt Orzik not out there. Do you think that has a lot to deal with it, or how concerned should fans be again with another rookie kicker maybe having some struggles?
Yeah, I would be concerned, and the more he misses, the more it amplifies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny. The first day that he kicked, they didn't kick the first 3 days because, like you said, Orzik has a calf injury, and they had to get a long snapper in here. So they finally got one in here, and they've kicked the last 2 days. Well, about halfway through the first field goal period after Smack had missed one of them, Matt LaFleur ran down under the goalpost and said something to the referees, and next thing you know, the referee stopped signaling whether kicks were good or not. And from the sideline, sometimes it's hard to see. And like the fact that he's trying to hide the results from us, I assume from us or maybe from the fans, makes me think, boy, I mean, don't you your kicker knows whether he missed it or didn't,
right,
or made it. Second of all, like that's part of the deal, like the pressure of being under the spotlight from fans and media. I mean, if you can't handle that in a July or August training camp practice, what's it going to be like when you're lining up for a 45-yarder to win a game after, Jordan Love he just drove the offense down in a 2-minute situation and put you in position to do it.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. What's Marshawn Lloyd? How's he looked like, with the Josh Jacobs still kind of uncertainty of what his status is going to be?
Well, it's August 5th, and they've had 6 training camp practices, and he's still practicing. So I would say he's ahead of where he's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to put too much into running plays during training camp because, they're definitely not tackling, and they're really not even hitting very much. So sometimes you see a run in camp that looks like it might be a 15 or 20-yard run, but in reality, it probably would have been, a 3 or 4-yard gain. But there have been some runs where you watch Lloyd cut, change directions, put his foot in the ground and just go. And you're like, okay, this is why they drafted him where they did. What was the 3rd round, I think. I mean, he's got some shiftiness. He looks stronger to me. I'm sure it's all part of all the work he did to try to stay healthy. And remember, this is a guy who has played in 1 game in 2 years. I believe it was 10 snaps 2 years ago. So, I joked to somebody the other day, I don't think we've written more or talked more about someone who's done less than Marshawn Lloyd and Bo Melton.
Mm-hmm.
But both those guys, could be big contributors if they could stay healthy.
And then we've heard a lot, or at least I've seen a lot about Jonathan Gannon's 3-safety defense. And you look, Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, you throw Javon Bullard in there. Have you gotten a glimpse of what that potentially looks like in training camp so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they basically played 3 safeties in their nickel last year. The difference now is that, Bullard is, traditionally the slot guy, but he's not just the slot guy in this. Any of those guys can do that. And he's not, they have multiple guys in the box. It used to obviously be just Evan Williams and McKinney were the deep safeties, and Bullard was in the box in the slot. So now they just move those guys around so much more. And it's been an interesting look. Bullard's a guy who, if he's one of your better defensive players, you want to find a way to get him on the field as much as possible. And, I know most teams play a lot of nickel, but you're not exclusively nickel. And so we maybe could see even more snaps from Javon Bullard. I mean, like he's made plays, he's around the ball. And why not get guys like that on the field? And it just goes back to, what we talked about earlier, where Gannon says he doesn't have, necessarily like a set scheme, a set playbook, and he's trying to adapt to his players. And I think the players, for the most part, seem to have really reacted to that well.
To kind of wrap it up, obviously, Micah Parsons talked with you guys yesterday, and that's been a big topic this morning, and I'm sure a lot of fans are wondering, when are we going to get him back? Can we get him back for that Chicago game, week 5, but maybe week 6 against Dallas sounds a little bit more realistic. Does that kind of seem like that's where he's got it focused on?
I mean, he said it's a very realistic possibility that he could play in that Dallas game. Like you said, Chicago's the week before. They're probably going to keep him on PUP. People don't necessarily understand the PUP rules, and they've actually changed a little bit this year. But if you're not on PUP to start training camp, you can't be on PUP to start the season. So he will be on PUP most likely to start the season, which isn't automatically you miss the first 4 games of the year. However, they changed it this year to where after 2 weeks on PUP in the regular season, you could start practicing. It used to be you couldn't practice till after 4 weeks. So maybe he could play in that Chicago game just because in the old rules, he wouldn't be able to practice until that week. Whereas now he'd have 2 weeks of practice if he's cleared to return by then. And then he could be ready to go right when he comes off PUP instead of having to sort of ramp up to it like guys did in the past. So that is one subtle change in the rules this year.
He's Rob Demovsky, ESPN NFL Nation Packers reporter. You check out his work at ESPN.com. Make sure you follow him on X/Twitter at Rob Demovsky. Man, appreciate the time as always. First of all, too, I got to say congrats. I know your oldest got a nice basketball job, right? Director of
he's got. He's got one more year of playing at Lawrence, but he wants to get into coaching, and he's running the Wisconsin Legends AAU program, and and of course Roan's looking forward to getting back to Eau Claire for his second season over there. I will tell you this: Roan was over there working some of Coach Malik's camps, and it was about 100 degrees the week he was there. And he realized that the place he's living in next year off campus does not have air conditioning. So hopefully it's a cool fall when he gets back to school in Eau Claire.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we're looking forward to seeing him on the court too. So we appreciate the time, Rob, and we'll see you here in a couple weeks in Green Bay. Okay, bud?
All right. Look forward to it, Dan. See ya.
See ya. There you go. Rob Demovsky, again, ESPN.com, ESPN NFL Nation reporter. Always big thanks to Rob for joining us and taking some time to chat some football with us.